Hello, my name is Joshua Keith, and this is theburningcoal.com, a website dedicated to God's glory, His grace, and our response to it. Today we're going to be talking about being thankful for the law. Now, when I mean the law, there's a lot of different ways we could talk about the law, but in particular, I want to focus on the law as the Old Testament would have looked at it. And by that I mean the first 5 books of the Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. And I think it's powerful what is said about the law in Psalm 1 verse 2. It says, "But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night." Now, passages like this are very common in the Psalms, where they talk about how great it is to be in God's law, how it is to spend time in there. And yet, we may be confused by this because when we think of, for example, the book of Leviticus, we don't view that as something delightful to read, maybe something to put us to sleep, but not something that we enjoy looking at. But the psalmist makes very clear that it's important that we meditate on it day and night, and it's something we should delight in. We should be thankful that God has blessed us with it. Even now with the New Testament, as we see the new law that has been given, we should not take for granted what has been given to us in these writings of Moses. So what is it that we can be thankful for? Well, first of all, we're thankful for the law because it's our first real introduction to who God is, His character, His mindset towards us. We see God as a creator, God as a covenant maker, God as one who watches over His people. Time and time again in the book of Genesis, we see that He is the one who brings salvation, but also judgment in the book of Exodus. We see that He is also the lawgiver, in that He reveals that law. And we see about in that law, in Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, as this law is laid out, we see about God's righteous nature and how important it is that people be holy, that they live up to His standards. And so God gave us these accounts so that we could know who He was and we could better understand Him, because He wants us to know that about Him. And so it's something that we should be thankful for. It also illuminates sin. First of all, it talks quite a bit about what sin is, and it goes into quite a few details. There's various reasons for this, and we're not going to go too deeply into it for time's sake. But one of the things that we see about the law and what it teaches is how Jesus summarizes it. That you love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, and your mind, and you love your neighbor as yourself. That really, when God is talking about sin and when He outlaws certain things, He's doing that because to have those things in our lives is either something that's hateful or disrespectful to God or to our fellow people. And so God wants us to understand why sin is wrong for us. And so we can see that through His law in the Old Testament. But also it explains the consequences. When we look at the Old Testament, we see that sin brings about death. And we see that in particular in the sacrificial system. We learn more about how serious the consequences of sin are in the New Testament. But we see just by the complete saturation of sacrifices in the Old Testament law how much death was prevalent. That sin, that when we show disrespect and hatred toward those around us and to our God, that it brings about death. It brings about pain. It brings about misery. And so we can learn all of these things by studying God's law, by meditating on it. And that's why it should be a delight to us, and why we should be thankful that God wanted us to know more about Him and more about ourselves. I hope this lesson blesses you in your walk in His kingdom.